YouTube, in the 2023-2024 NBA season, the Detroit Pistons finished with the 9th worst record in NBA history of 82-game seasons. And I'm gonna come out and just make a hot take on this video right away, right off the bat, folks. Here it goes. I know I'm a hero for saying this, but I actually think the Pistons will win more than 14 games next season. I know, shocker, right? Listen, it could be worse. You could be a 76ers fan who have the top 2 spots as far as worst 82-game seasons of all time. But in all seriousness, I do believe the Pistons are making a lot of good moves, and particularly in the 2024 offseason, bolstering their roster quite a bit with big-time free agent signings, with 5th overall pick Ron Holland and newly hired head coach JB Bickerstaff, previously of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, kind of a hot take, but I actually think the Pistons got better this offseason, and, you know, I would expect more than 14 wins. Again, I know it's controversial, all right? I apologize. In this video, this is going to be a Detroit Pistons deep dive, where we're going to be diving deeply into their 2024 offseason. Every single move they've made this offseason, we're going to go over in this video. I'm going to explain what I think you can expect from the Pistons as far as the 2025 NBA season goes. We know they've improved, but just how much? You know, I'm going to be sprinkling those takes that I have throughout the video, and we're also, after the offseason deep dive, we're going to be doing a massive inventory of their roster. I'm going to go through player by player and, you know, give my takes on them. And Detroit Pistons fans, you got a lot to be excited for. It can only go up from here. So without further ado, let's get right into this Detroit Pistons deep dive. As I mentioned, we'll be going through the 2024 offseason moves, okay? And this will include a couple categories. It'll be re-signings, additions, which will, you know, include trades and signings and stuff like that in free agency, as well as departures, players you lost. And then we're gonna be going through their 2024 draft, and then we'll do the roster inventory after all that's done. So Pistons make a ton of moves, okay? And, you know, there's a lot to cover in this video, so let's get right into it. And you start by making a pretty big one in the re-signings department, locking down your franchise player and former #1 overall pick, Cade Cunningham. And again, I'm not going to be spending too much time on the players right now because we are doing the inventory later, so I'll talk about most of it then. But just right off the bat, I'll give you this. You know, Cade Cunningham really played like a star last season, and I don't think you can dispute that at all, despite the losing record, despite, you know, the loss streak, you know, tying, again, my Sixers all time. But I don't know how much you could necessarily attribute all that losing to Cade Cunningham, okay? Him in particular played like he was supposed to, and, you know, I got to be honest, gave you exactly what you expect out of him, and that is star caliber point guard play. And he showed a lot of improvement, and not only that, he was healthy for most of the season. So I don't know how you see this 5-year max extension on the rookie scale end and say, you know, this guy is known for losing teams and stuff like that. Like, I'm seeing some of these takes where people are like, oh, Cade Cunningham max extension, are we sure this guy's the leader of this team and can be a, you know, the guy moving forward for Detroit? That's absurd. Absolutely nuts. L takes out of those people. I don't even have to explain why those are bad. I think if you're watching this video right now, you already know why. So yeah, securing your franchise player is probably a pretty good thing to do, and, you know, they do it with a 5-year max. Simone Fontecchio is a player I like, and he is a wing shooter that you acquired from the Utah Jazz. He is an excellent shooter, actually, and, you know, one of the better potential shooting wings that I think this league has. Last season really broke out as that, you know, top-tier shooter, and you actually re-signed Simone Fontecchio for a 2-year extension, and I think that's a great move because not only is Fontecchio, I think, still having his best basketball in the NBA ahead of him, but also, I mean, just in the limited time he had with you guys last season, 16 games, he averaged 43% from 3 on 6.3 attempts per game. This is a W re-signing. So those are the re-signings. You know, now we're going to move on to the additions category, and man, there are quite a few of them. And starting with Malik Beasley, you get him on a 1-year, I believe, $6 million deal, and the Pistons have, I guess, needed some more catch and shoot guys, and Malik Beasley's about as good as it gets in that regard. He had a great season with the Bucks last year. You know, he is one of the better catch and shoot players in the league. Spot up threes, movement, off screen, stuff like that. He can even, you know, do a lot of stuff in the mid-range. He's just a great perimeter shooter. I think adding him, you know, and a veteran presence at that on a 1-year, $6 million deal, you got to feel pretty good about that. You also acquire Tim Hardaway Jr. via trade with the Mavericks, and you basically get Tim Hardaway and 3 future second-round picks for Quentin Grimes, and that's the Knicks player that you acquired from the Bojan Bogdanovic trade last season. And Quentin Grimes is a good defender, but, you know, it's clear that obviously if they're making this trade, they don't see him as part of the long-term plans, and if you don't see him as a part of those plans, get what you can for him. And I think 3 second-round picks and a quality scorer is good value. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. So, you know, good move there. But probably the biggest signing of the offseason was Tobias Harris. And Tobias Harris has already spent time in Detroit. You know, he played a couple seasons with Detroit, and those are some of his best years in the league. Now he's a veteran coming off my 76ers contract. And, you know, there had been rumors a lot about Toby going back to Detroit. There was mutual interest for a long time. We heard a lot of trade rumors throughout the years. I will say this about Tobias. You know, I have some pretty unique experience after watching him for 5+ years, almost every game of my Sixers. And Tobias Tobias gets a ton of flack and hate online and stuff like that. And, there is valid criticism for his playoff production, for his, inability to, I guess, be a number 3 option on that contract. I will say this though. First of all, the contract's not his fault. Okay. He's not going to turn down a near max contract for 5 years. That's just not, I don't know why we would expect him to do that. It is the Sixers organization's fault for giving him a contract that was higher than his value. Okay. So, the contract isn't his issue. It's the front office's issue. So you see a lot of Sixers fans hating on the contract, and that's fair, but don't throw it at Tobias, throw it at the front office. About his ability to perform big in big games, that is something you can criticize. Those are personal issues for him that happened, last year and the year before. Scoring 0 points in the elimination game in last season's playoffs, that's a big disappointment, But, to be fair to Tobias Harris, okay, throughout his time here, he was a consummate professional. That's what I can say. He never lashed out at the fans. He never, put himself above the team. He never threw a temper tantrum, right? He never did any of that stuff. He came to work every day and he did his best, okay? And I think after getting so much hate from our fans, I think that's a pretty admirable thing to have done for 5 years straight. I'm not talking about like a little hate here and there. I mean, Tobias was like target number 1 for Sixers fans for basically 3 straight years, maybe even longer. And again, came to work every day, did his best, and that is admirable in my opinion. And then also, let's not forget, this is a talented player. There's not a lot of power forwards that you're going to find that can, provide the scoring ability and the way that he can score off the dribble, right? And as well as, his improved defense over the time with my Sixers, okay? He was never known as a great defender. I still don't think he's a great defender, but he is not a negative defender, I guess you could say, especially one-on-one. He is a little bit lackluster transition-wise. He is not necessarily, again, a great defender, but I don't think he's a bad defender. And I also think his scoring and finishing ability around the rim is massive for a power forward. Again, there's not many guys that have that at his size. Good shooter, right? He can average for the Pistons next season 15 to 20 points a game, about 6 or 7 rebounds, couple assists, provide average defense or so, and shoot, from anywhere from 35 to 40% from 3 on, a few attempts per game. That's pretty good for the contract. You got him at 2 years, 54 million, 52 million. Again, I just had to say my piece on that because, I do have a unique perspective on this issue. But Pistons fans, you already know what to expect with Tobias. You've had him before and he's only gotten better since his time with you guys. So expect good veteran leadership for him to come in and help guys like Ron Holland, like Jalen Duren, like Cade Cunningham. I think that's what you can expect from Tobias while also providing solid play on the court. Wendell Moore Jr. joins via trade with the Timberwolves, and he actually acquired Wendell Moore Jr. in the 2024 NBA draft on draft day. You trade Cam Spencer, who was the number 53 overall pick, and you send him to the Grizzlies. You also trade future second round pick and cash considerations for Wendell Moore Jr. and Bobby Klintman, who was the 37th pick, and we'll talk about Bobby Klintman later, but this is a good move for the Pistons. Wendell Moore Jr. is a young player still, and his shooting ability from the wing is probably his best ability. That's what he's supposed to develop into, okay? He's only 22 years old. He was a first round pick from Dallas in the 2022 NBA draft, late in the first round, and never really found a consistent role with Minnesota. Maybe you can get some more value out of him. So, kind of an interesting trade. We'll have to see what happens with it. And the final addition, which I have to, again, unique perspective here, is B-Ball Paul Reed after the Sixers waived him to clear cap space and a roster position for their free agency. And listen, you guys are in for a treat with B-Ball Paul. He is one of the more fun players I've ever seen with the Sixers. He's a great personality. He is a fun guy and he is a good player. He's an absolute dog. He comes in and provides big time high energy off the bench at that backup 5 position. You lose James Wiseman, so he's going to be your backup 5. And B-Ball Paul is going to fit in perfectly with Detroit and what their fans are all about. He is a hard worker and he's a fun guy to watch, and he's just a great human being. I love B-Ball Paul. We love B-Ball on this channel. It's unfortunate we had to let him go. I'm telling you, Detroit, you guys are going to love this guy so much. I think he's going to fit in nicely with your team. I think he's going to be a keeper in Detroit. I think he's going to stay there a long time. It makes sense to me that he'll be there in Detroit for the next few years. Also on the court, quality backup 5. He's also added a little bit of a perimeter jump shot to his game, which is big time for him. But, he just has a knack for the basketball. Offensive rebounds, blocks, steals, 50-50 balls. He just is always around the basketball. Great hands, on the defensive end of the floor. Knock the ball out while players are driving. He gets a lot of interceptions in passing lanes, and offensively, again, he's a great finisher and someone you can rely on to, maybe provide a little bit of a perimeter outside jump shot moving forward in his career. But again, the energy and the intensity, and when B-Ball Paul's when he's locked in, he can wreak havoc with his hustle and energy. He's also a good, solid finisher, like I said. So, he will slide right in Detroit Detroit. Love B-Ball Paul. We're going to miss you, bro. Detroit, you're going to love him. And as far as the departures, someone's got to go to make room for all these additions. And, quite a few of them. We have Taj Gibson. He departs via free agency to the Hornets. And, Taj Gibson was basically a late season addition for Detroit. And, not much to say about that. Quentin Grimes, we already explained the trade with the Mavs for Tim Hardaway Jr. Good trade. And James Wiseman, leaving to the Indiana Pacers, and you replace him with B-Ball Paul, who I actually think is a better backup 5 than Wiseman. I like Wiseman, but I think, he's a little inconsistent. From game to game, you need a reliable backup 5, and I think B-Ball Paul is much better suited for that and the way this team wants to play. So, Wiseman, high upside guy still. He's a great athlete and stuff like that, but I think B-Ball Paul is a better player, and I think that's fair to say. So that's about it. As far as the free agency, off-season period goes, we're going to get into the draft in a second, but, some great moves there. I think that's a B+, A- off-season. You addressed a couple needs, you got better, and you got deeper, and you got a bunch of players that can contribute this season. I think, with a lot of these additions and the players you already have, I think you're looking at maybe a 30-35 win team with the Pistons if everything goes well. I'm sure Coach Bickerstaff will get these guys ready to go by the time the season starts, and I really like a lot of these moves. Adding veterans to teach and help your young players develop. Basically every rebuilding team that, gets to the next level actually is successful in the rebuild does this move right here. They add some veteran pieces to come in and help the young guys learn, and it just raises your floor a little bit for what you can expect season to season. I can remember a similar move that my Sixers did whenever, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and those guys were super young and, still trying to win games, but needed some help. Actually brought in JJ Redick and Amir Johnson that offseason, and it really helped the Sixers the following year get from like a, 20 win team to like a 30-35 win team. So a lot of great moves, no question about it. This is exactly what you're supposed to do when your players are on the cusp of, reaching their, close to their full potential. And a guy, maybe in the case of Cade Cunningham, he's about ready to take that next step. You bring in pieces to help them raise their floor. I think that's a good move. So now with that out of the way, we'll talk about all those players, coming up, but let's get into the 2024 NBA draft process where the Pistons would select a couple players, and we'll, let's dive into it. Now, some of the more uninformed NBA fans watching this video right now, if you don't know this piece of information, probably a good thing you're watching this video. You're probably thinking, DeHave, wow, 14 win Pistons. Wow, I can't believe, who did they select first overall in that draft? Okay. Well, the funny thing is, the Pistons kind of got absolutely destroyed in the draft lottery. Very unfortunately, worst record in the entire league, and only end up getting the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft, which is, again, very unfortunate. I can't even imagine how that feels as a Pistons fan. Let me know down in the comments how you feel about that. Will the Pistons have beef with the Hawks from now on? I don't know, but all that out of the way, you actually do make 2 solid picks in this draft, and the first one being 5th overall pick from G League Ignite, Ron Holland II. And Ron Holland, I want you guys, Pistons fans, let me know down in the comments how you feel about him, because this is a player with some of the biggest upside offensively in the entire draft, in my opinion. Ron Holland is an exceptional athlete from the wing who has tremendous upside offensively, as I mentioned. You'd like to see him shoot the ball a little bit better from the 3-point range, but that is something that can be improved over time. During the summer league, he averaged 20 points a game, about 7 rebounds, and 3 assists with almost 3 steals per game. That is definitely something that is a positive thing for the Detroit Pistons. And again, I think Tobias Harris is going to play a big role in Ron Holland's future as far as a veteran leader. They actually, all things considered, for the forward position, are both offensive, forwards or wings that can, get to the rim in transition and finish at a high rate. Ron Holland being a much better athlete, but I think, Tobias Harris' experience with a similar type of skill set in that regard can help Ron Holland. The thing that people like about Holland is his fluidity for his size, and he's 6'8", and he has good shooting mechanics. He is going to be a guy that will be able, hopefully someday, to create his own shot and score at a high clip, which is as a volume scorer. And this could end up in a couple years being your second scoring option next to a guy like Cade Cunningham if everything goes well. Defensively, I think Ron Holland has a lot of intriguing things about him, primarily his physical natural traits. Okay, so he kind of has all the tools to be able to put this all together. I think it's up to Detroit's coaching staff and Ron Holland himself to be able to effectively execute those development strategies, right? But expect Ron Holland in his first season to be a little bit inefficient offensively. I don't think that's something to be concerned about. I think you have to be patient with a guy like Ron Holland. Let him work through his mistakes. Let him figure out what good shots are in the NBA, and the only way to find that out is to take enough bad ones to where you realize those aren't shots I need to take. So I think he's going to be a big time volume shooter, and I think, again, if his efficiency is bad in the first season, don't write him off. This is something that a lot of scoring, offensive heavy players that come right out of the draft, especially after a one and done season, no matter where it's from, are going to have to learn and work through. So by any means, not a finished product. And I think that's encouraging because he's already so good at the things that he's good at, which is, transition scoring and, the athleticism. We saw so many highlight dunks in the summer league. So this is an exciting player. I think, he will fit in with this team nicely. And again, I think Tobias Harris being there is going to help him a lot. At the 37th overall pick, you actually select Bobby Klintman. And Bobby Klintman out of Wake Forest and also the Australian NBL. He is a Swedish player, and Bobby Klintman is a 6'9" forward, probably a power forward, and he weighs 212 pounds. Another guy that everybody is saying they like the size and fluidity from this kid. And I'm not a draft expert, so I don't claim to know everything about these players. I'm just kind of reading from smarter people than me online of what they have to say, draft experts and stuff like that. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. Bobby Klintman has showed a lot of signs as a three-point shooter from what I'm seeing, and this is coming from NBA.com. Klintman knocked down 36% of 75 catch and shoot threes in Australia in the NBL. That's a great sign. If you could get a forward that size to be a perimeter spacer, that is a big thing. This is a guy that has a lot of upside, I think, and also a lot of physical tools. And it could be a situation where you're just stacking up on big players that have a lot of versatility and high ceilings, right? So I like this pick at 37. I know that a lot of people actually had Klintman going in the first round, late in the first round. So this is a great pick for the Pistons. Just another, versatile forward to add to the roster, and hopefully it works out for them, But as far as the draft, for the situation they were put in with that 5th overall pick, I think you got to be pretty happy with how they did. And a lot of people are criticizing the Ron Holland pick and saying, they're going for the flashy guy that scores a lot, and they already have scorers. And, this is why the Pistons are the way they are. I think it's way too early to make calls like that and to judge these players like that when you haven't even seen them play an NBA game yet. And who knows, maybe Ron Holland will reach his full ceiling and become one of the best scorers from that position in the league. So you can't really say a lot of that stuff yet. Same thing with Alex Sarr and Reece Shea. A lot of people are saying, oh, they're busts. They played bad in the summer league. It's like, what are you talking about? Since when do we judge summer league production as, a player's value as far as where they were drafted? I mean, we got to see a couple full seasons of these guys to really make determinations like that. You could criticize the skill set and, the projected value, but I don't think, just saying Ron Holland is a bad pick is really fair yet. So I like these picks, and I, particularly Ron Holland, I think he has some of the highest upside due to his athleticism and unique scoring ability in this draft. So hopefully, he can work out that way, and good luck, to Pistons fans. Let me know down in the comment section how we're feeling about these picks. And without further ado, folks, let's get right into the 2025 Detroit Pistons roster deep dive, where we're going to be going through player by player in this video. Let's go. Let's jump right into it, folks. So again, we're going to have to start with the best player on this team, and that is Cade Cunningham, the franchise player. And again, clearly by no stretch of any statistical category, really had the best season of his career by a mile last season, really taking a leap forward as the guy you thought he would be coming out of that 1st overall pick in the draft. I mean, Cade Cunningham, only still 22 years old, but possesses so much great ability offensively. I mean, this is a point guard of the future. His shot creation, his playmaking, his versatility, his size as a point guard, 6'6", 220. How many guys with his offensive skill set are going to be that big? So, 62 games played last season. That is pretty good. And taking a big leap in his efficiency. I mean, shooting 45% last season, career high. About 36% from 3 last season, league average, career high. And that is on 5.4 attempts per game. A lot of them are difficult threes as well. He got to the line a lot more than he's ever been to the line last season. 4.4 free throw attempts per game on 87%, all career highs. 23 points per game, career high. 7.5 assists, career high. So I know the turnovers could be an issue for Cade, but at the end of the day, you got to be thrilled with how he played last season despite that record, okay? I don't think we could put all of that or, really a lot of that on Cade Cunningham, because for the most part, I think he was doing what he was asked to do and doing it really well. He played like a star last season, and I think he has to get credit like a star. So, it'll be interesting to see what his season next year looks like, with all these additions that can provide solid value. You talk about the veterans. I think he's going to have a career year again, and I think he's going to take an even bigger step with the Pistons next season. And again, knock on wood for a long, healthy season for Cade Cunningham, where he plays, maybe even at a better level, like an all-star next season. There's a lot of young players on this team. We have to talk about Jaden Ivey, out of Purdue in his second season last year. This is a guard that has a bright future. He took a big step down statistically last season, but I think that a lot of that is due to a bigger role, because the season prior, his rookie year, he had to do a lot of the Cade Cunningham work. So he had the ball in his hands a lot more. And if you just look at the raw numbers, you see a dip in production a little bit, and you might say, wow, that's a sophomore slump right there. I don't like that, but that's really not the case if you look into it, because he was playing a lot more off the ball last season, I think. So he really wasn't asked to do as much last season. And, the efficiency could be something to worry about. I won't lie, but this is a talented player. And I think in the right setting, which I think Coach Bickerstaff will do a good job of putting him in a winning setting where he's asked to do basically exactly what he should be asked to do, which is be a complimentary scorer. I think his efficiency will go up because he'll be put in better positions to succeed, and he'll be able to take better shots. He won't have to do as much that doesn't work to his skill set. So I think, with him being an off-ball, shooter and a guy late in a shot clock, you pass the ball to him and he gets downhill and gets to the rim. He's a super quick player, one of the fastest guards in the league. He won't be, asked to be the second leading scorer on this team, or a guy to, get 15 shots a game up on the ball. So, I think him being a, complimentary scorer is probably what's best suited for Ivy. And I think he improves next season in that regard. Jalen Duren, I want you guys Pistons fans to let me know how you feel about Jalen Duren, because I've actually seen a lot of, mixed reviews on this guy, primarily for his defense. A lot of people say, he's not as good as his numbers would indicate, but I don't know, man. I watched Jalen Duren, and I think offensively, he is one of the most promising players in the league for a center. I mean, he's only 20 years old, which people forget about. 20 years old going into his third season. And last season, took a big leap in a lot of these categories. Maybe the defense is a concern. Maybe he's not as good offensively as people say, but I don't know, man. The numbers look really good. So I want you guys Pistons fans to let me know, because I just don't watch every Pistons game. So maybe there is something I'm missing. But as far as I can see, good offensive rebounder. He averaged 12 rebounds a game last season in 29 minutes per game. That is pretty elite. 14 points per game on 62% from the field. That's good efficiency as well. And the passing is what I really like from Duren. He is a good playmaker for that center position. I love his basketball IQ. I think is super good. He seems to be a smart player that understands the game offensively well, and is able to, make the right decisions a lot of times. So for a 20-year-old, that is something exceptional. And I think he's only just going to get so much better. So I think you got to give him another year or two to really see what this guy's all about. And, again, a lot of these players are going to look a lot different in winning settings. So this could be a make or break season for Duren, whether or not you give him a long-term extension. I think this is the year where you find out exactly how good he can be, with a lot more, added expectations of winning a few games this season. So I think, I'm not necessarily saying the Pistons have playoff expectations or anything like that. They're starting to put these pieces around these guys to really see what they're made of. And when you do that, you get the results one way or another. You kind of figure out how they're going to be for you in the future. So this is a good season to test a lot of these young guys and see what they look like around good pieces. Jalen Duren being no exception. We talked about Ron Holland and how I think he fits on this team is super well, because this is a young team. And when you think of young teams, you think of athleticism. The Pistons honestly could have used a little bit more athleticism last season. And, Ron Holland is a freak athlete. No question about it. His leaping ability. And I just think his size is a little bit of a different look for scoring next season. He will be, I think, a little bit inefficient, unfortunately, primarily as a rookie. That is something he will get better at as the seasons go on. That's kind of just how that works for volume scorers. As I mentioned, when they come to the league, they usually struggle with their percentages. But, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ron Holland is a rookie of the year candidate, which he probably could be, because the numbers are probably going to look pretty good from scoring. And I think if you can develop him into a defensive lockdown perimeter defender, which again, I said he has all the tools to be able to be, this is where he could really excel for your team. Because honestly, when I'm looking at this roster, and particularly last season, I don't see a ton of perimeter defenders. You trade away Quentin Grimes. You add guys like Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, who aren't necessarily known for their defense. You add Tim Hardaway, who's not necessarily known for his defense. So I think having a guy with that type of athleticism, that different type of athleticism that is pretty rare, that's what you could hopefully try to develop him into. The perimeter defense, I think, is going to be something that if he can be really good at, he'll be able to be good at that right away. That's not something I don't think is going to take 5 years to develop. The athleticism's already there. You just got to teach him how to put him in the right spots. You got to teach him discipline and things like that. So, Coach Bickerstaff will do good with that. I think he could be one of the best perimeter defenders on this team, but certainly not better than Ausar Thompson, who, in my opinion, has like DPOY type of defensive upside. Like, this guy is, a lot of people compare him to like Kawhi Leonard early in his career. And when you watch Ausar Thompson, I don't think that's that far of a stretch. The physical tools are exceptional. The athleticism, the ability to stay in front of ball handlers, yet also guard multiple positions. You could just put this guy almost anywhere on the floor and expect him to excel defensively. There obviously are going to be questions with his offense, right? Can he not knock down a three anywhere near league average. Last season, he shot 19% from three on 2 attempts per game. That's always going to be the question with him. But one of the questions I have is like, what do we think about his natural position? You know, is it a wing or is it a forward? Because if he can, you know, get a little bit more bulkier, right? I think that is something that he could play in the dunker spot. He could, you know, there's ways to get these guys involved offensively without necessarily being a elite shooter or a consistent one at all. You know, when you have that great of defensive talent and also the ability to finish lobs and, you know, sky up for rebounds, and he's a great rebounder, by the way, play make a little bit, and, you know, that type of defensive versatility, there's no question, you know, there's ways to get this guy, even if he's a liability offensively, which I don't think he is. I think he is from three right now, but that doesn't define his offensive game. He does plenty of things well offensively, but like, let's say, you know, he is a versatile, like elite tier defender, primarily from the perimeter, a good playmaker, and a guy that can cut to the basket well and finish and, you know, things like that. You know, this is a guy that I don't think the three has to define him. I think there are many of ways if you get creative enough to get him involved on an offense and not have him be a liability. So I think, you know, Ausar Thompson has probably, other than maybe Cade Cunningham, the highest ceiling on this team. You know, you talk about Ron Holland, you talk about Cade Cunningham. Ausar Thompson's right up there, man. He's a special type of versatile piece that, again, you know, he is kind of raw from a lot of those standpoints, but he's only 21 years old and he's already so great at certain things like defense and rebounding and, you know, the other things we mentioned. So look for Ausar Thompson to make a big leap in year 2 and hopefully improve that perimeter shooting. If he can average anywhere around a league average, just say from the corner, for instance, you know, if he could shoot 3 attempts per game on 35% from the corner, this is a guy you're going to struggle to take off the floor. That's how good he's going to be, because, you know, if that's the case, then he really almost has no weaknesses. So again, look for Ausar to be a big piece of this team moving forward and potentially have a breakout season next year. Marcus Sasser is a guard that I like. You know, this team has a little bit of a logjam at the guard, in my opinion, primarily the point guard. And, you know, for me, Marcus Sasser really is kind of a point guard, and I'm not sure he's a guy that you can really play off the ball too much and expect great results, because I think his best value is as, you know, an on-ball creator offensively, and he's a little bit small, right? And I do think he has good length from what I understand, and maybe that could help him defensively. But what are we feeling about Marcus Sasser? I watched him a lot last season, and I think early on in the season, he looked to be a good scorer that was efficient. And as the season kind of progressed, he kind of fell out of the rotation from what I understand. So, you know, what's the consensus on Sasser? What are we feeling about this guard rotation? Let me know. Isaiah Stewart, Beef Stew. This is a fiery competitor, a good rebounder. You know, this is a guy that can average near a double-double. He's a good roller, you know, good finisher, I think. And, you know, defensively, he's a little undersized for a center, but, you know, he actually can shoot the three pretty well. You know, as displayed last season, his best season from three, averaging 4 attempts per game on 3 balls and 38%. That is very good for a stretch forward. I think his, you know, for a power forward, he is, you know, really big, honestly. He's only 6'8", but he's strong, you know, and it's hard to believe that Beef Stew is only 23 years old, because I feel like he's been with the Pistons forever at this point. You know, that's just kind of what it feels like to me. But last season, you know, dealt with some injuries. I like Beef Stew. You know, I know Pistons fans are kind of up and down on him as far as I understand. Let me know down in the comments section how we feel about that. Again, I'm not tapped in with all of the Pistons stuff, so, you know, there's gonna be things that I'm just not sure about. I'm trying to admit what those are, and hopefully you guys can let me know. But I like Isaiah Stewart a lot. I think he is solid at what he does, and, you know, whether or not he's a 4 or 5, I think that's something we have to figure out. But, you know, now with Duren and B-Ball Paul, he's certainly probably going to get power forward minutes. So Jalen Duren, you know, hasn't played a ton of games with the Pistons, but just looking at his stats, raw stats, like last year he shot the 3 really well, 39% on 2 attempts per game, and he shot 50% from the field, but he only played 17 games at 14 minutes per game. So, you know, what are we feeling about this guard? I actually don't know a ton about him, so if you guys can let me know, that'd be big. Stanley Umade, another guy, 24 games played, but actually has some decent numbers, you know, 45% from 3 on 2 attempts per game. What are we feeling? But, you know, the veterans, this is a big addition. You know, this team really lacked a lot of veterans last season, especially after trading away Bojan Bogdanovic, who's probably your most reliable veteran, and you actually bring in a ton of them. I mean, you know, if you really think about it, you have some, you know, probably 3 or 4 solid veterans that could play good minutes. You know, if you want to say Fontecchio is a veteran, you could, because he's 28 years old, but this will be his 4th season in the league. I think he actually is going to have a big impact on this team as a floor spacer from the 3 or the 4, and I really really like his size at 6'7", 200 pounds, just to come in and hit a bunch of big shots. He is a special type of shooter, and I would expect that again next season. Tobias Harris, we talked about the skill set, how it's going to translate. Tobias Harris is a good complementary piece, and I think he's going to fit right in with guys like Cade Cunningham. He is a knockdown, off the ball catch and shoot guy, okay? So he can do that. He's kind of actually, now that I think about it, similar to Bojan Bogdanovic in a ton of ways. I think he's a little bit more physical and able to get inside the paint a little bit better. I think he's probably a little better defensively and probably a little bit worse of a shooter, but they actually, I think, will have similar roles. And you're going to ask Tobias Harris to shoot a lot of catch and shoot threes, and you're probably going to get some open ones with guys like Cade Cunningham attracting a lot of attention. You can also ask him to, set up in kind of the mid-range post area, and he has a back to the basket game. He has a face-up game. He's a really good face-up game in the mid-range, and he's just when he's aggressive, getting downhill and finishing over defenders, that's when he's at his best. I think he's just going to provide a lot of complementary offense, and I think that is a big improvement despite what the current consensus is on Tobias Harris as a player. I think he's going to add a ton of value to this team next season. He's going to be one of the reasons you win a lot more games, because he's, for the most part, other than maybe the playoffs we could have an argument about, for the most part you can count on this guy to play almost every night and give it his best effort, and usually he's pretty consistent throughout the season for shooting threes and scoring the ball. So just a great addition for Tobias. Tim Hardaway Jr., he's listed as a small forward on ESPN. I think that's kind of weird, but I don't think he's a small forward, and it'll be interesting to see what Tim Hardaway Jr.'s role on this team is going to be. You have a lot of similar type of players that can score. Tim Hardaway is an on-ball creator. He's an on-ball scorer. You're not really going to get a ton else from him. You're not going to get elite perimeter defense, but he is a knockdown three-point shooter, and he can shoot at a high volume. I think the Pistons really have emphasized shooting this offseason, and I think they got a ton better at it. But if you're talking about this guard logjam and you're, not sure who to play, I don't think Tim Hardaway is necessarily going to be at the top of the list, because for one, he takes away the minutes from the young players, and two, I just don't think he's a small forward at 6'5" and his size. So you already have small forwards too. If you want to play Tobias at the 4, you got Ron Holland at the 3, you got Fontecchio at the 3. So it'll be interesting to see what Tim Hardaway's role on this team will be. Maybe you like him as a 6-man. I think that could be a good option. But another shooting guard that is a veteran that can provide a lot of shooting is Malik Beasley, and this is one of my favorite additions for the Pistons, because talk about a high volume sniper as a shooter. I mean, Malik Beasley last season, and this is pretty consistent throughout his career, probably the best season shooting though, other than 2020 in Minnesota. He averaged 41% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. That is elite tier off-ball shooting. He can come off the screens with the ball in his hands and do a little bit of shooting that way as well. He can, he can operate a little bit as a ball handler through the pick and roll and create for himself most of the time off of those screens. Like if you want to bring Jalen Duren up on the perimeter on the wing, set an on-ball screen for Beasley late in the shot clock, he can step through the screen and, assuming the center doesn't hedge, knock down a mid-range shot from a pull-up. So I think, this is a big-time value addition for the Pistons that I like quite a bit. And again, it's just going to be interesting to see what these guard rotation looks like, because Coach Bickerstaff's going to have to work out a lot of minutes for these guys. We know Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Malik Beasley are going to get a ton of minutes, okay? Now you have guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. What happens to a Marcus Sasser role? You have a ton of forward depth as well. I mean, talk about Tobias Harris, Simone Fontecchio, Ausar Thompson. Where does he play? Where does he fit into this equation? Isaiah Stewart at the 4. So it's going to be interesting. You have a lot of good players that, could make a case for a big time lineup spot, right? So I think Coach Bickerstaff will handle it well. And, that's what I expect from him. I would probably lean towards the younger guys in a lot of these disputes for the minutes, right? Like when you're a team like the Pistons and you're trying to figure out who's going to be in your core moving forward, I think you have to lean towards the young guys as far as who you play this season for the most minutes. If it's a situation where like you want to give Ausar Thompson minutes and you want to give Tobias Harris minutes, I lean towards Ausar Thompson. We have to see what this guy's made of, right? And giving him 20 minutes a game, and Tobias 30, if it's 50 minutes to divide, is not the way to do that. So I'm sure Coach Bickerstaff understands that, but again, I don't think the goal of this season is necessarily to make the playoffs and compete. I think it's maybe more of a kind of transition year to see what this core is made of, and that includes all your young players. So I think you have to give everybody a chance, a fair chance throughout the season with a lot of minutes, and put these guys in situations with these veterans like Tobias Harris to where now you can't really say as a Cade Cunningham, I don't have any help, so it's hard to judge my season. When you're playing next to guys that have been around for a while, like Malik Beasley, like Tobias Harris, that are good complementary options, rotations, you're really going to get a good look at what this young core is made of. So that's kind of where I'm at on that. But also, you know, some other players that I like on this team, Troy Brown Jr., you know, I know he had a struggling last couple years, but, you know, honestly, this is a good shooter. And I think, you know, another forward that probably will be towards the end of the bench, but I like him as a player. You trade for Wendell Moore Jr., maybe have plans for him to get in the rotation. He's more of a two guard, so kind of interesting. B-Ball Paul will certainly, I would imagine, be the backup center. He is certainly that quality player. If you want to get crazy with it, you could play B-Ball Paul at the 4. And, you know, I think defensively, he is versatile enough to guard power forwards. And honestly, his size profile is more of like a power forward, but he's a backup 5, and I expect that to be his role. Come in and substitute for Jalen Duren. You know, other than that, you know, another veteran guard, Jalen Noel, you know, spent a lot of time in Minnesota. Last couple years kind of fell out of rotations, and, you know, he is on the roster, I believe. So kind of interesting there. Evan Fournier is on the roster, I believe. So, you know, with that big contract still, so he'll be an expiring guy, I would imagine, pretty soon. But other than that, you know, Malachi Flynn as well, excuse me, you know, he is a guy that had a lot of success for certain games throughout the season last year. I believe having a 50-point game, or was it 40 points? I don't know, but another point guard that is going to have to make the roster probably and fight for minutes. You know, this is a big time minute distribution situation where it's really going to be important how Coach Bickerstaff employs these minutes for their future. So that is pretty much everybody on the roster that I wanted to note. You know, I think Bobby Klintman and Ron Holland will work their way in at some point to the rotation. I think Ron Holland will certainly be one of the focal points of the rotation. Bobby Klintman a little bit less, because there are a ton of power forwards that need minutes, like Isaiah Stewart and like Tobias Harris. And honestly, you could maybe even say Ausar Thompson. He's probably more of the starting 3. You know, I don't know how that's going to work with him and Holland, but we'll have to see. Make sure you guys let me know down in the comment section if you are a Pistons fan. That's pretty much it for the deep dive. You know, I think this is a 30-win team next season. That's where I would put them. Not quite at the play-in level, but just below that, like maybe a 12 seed, right? I think that's kind of where you're at. You know, you're probably going to be in a lot of close games like you were last year. You know, despite all those losses, you were in a lot of close games. And I think the coaching upgrade in JB Bickerstaff is going to be big. I think this team has this organization has a clear vision, and that vision is to see what this core has next season. And I like that approach because, you know, maybe you're a little bit uncertain. There's a lot of moving parts in the last couple of years with injuries, with a ton of roster overhauls, with new ownership, with new front office, with new coaching. So this is a transition year to see kind of what, you know, this is an inventory year. Honestly, let's take inventory of this team and see who we like long term, and see, you know, who those guys are, and, you know, go from there accordingly. But I think this team got a ton better, and primarily for the veterans are going to raise their floor a lot higher. And I think this is probably a 25-30 win team. So I think that's a pretty good number. You know, I don't think necessarily you want to be in the top end of the lottery moving forward. You kind of have some young pieces that are super high upside. So I do expect them to be a lottery team, but maybe not so much in like the top 5 area. We'll have to see. Maybe that's what they want to do again. I don't know. Pistons fans, if I got anything wrong, if I mischaracterized anybody, if I struggled throughout the video with certain information, please let me know and correct me, because I'm trying to learn about every team. This deep dive series has been so fun for me, and that's how I get to learn about every team and engage with the fan bases of the team directly. And that's my favorite thing to do. So I want to hear from every Pistons fan watching this video, like 100%. What do you guys think of the video? What do you think of my takes? And please correct me if any information I missed. You know, I'm a Sixers fan, so I don't know everything going on with the Pistons, and, you know, you guys will. So you guys are obviously going to know way more than me about your own team. I just kind of want to know that information that you guys have. That's how I learn and grow as a creator, to, you know, inform myself, and, you know, who better to hear it from the individual fan base. So the media can, you know, kind of spin things a lot of times. We talked about that in the Rockets video. You know, I actually had an L take in that video, took a massive L in that video, because I actually thought Alperen Sengun wasn't going to get an extension, because I read 1,000 reports that were basically saying, oh, they're hesitant to give him a max. And it turns out that wasn't true. It turns out that they were just waiting, because it's similar to a Tyrese Maxey situation. They're 100% going to extend their best player. It was just about like the timing, because they had a ton of cap space next season. So if they wait on it, so that kind of stuff, you know, I will probably get a lot of that wrong. And, you know, I do a lot of research for these videos, but it's just not, you know, I upload one every day, so I can't spend 10 hours going into your team. You know what I mean? So please let me know if you can. Again, you know, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already, because we are going to be doing every team in the NBA in this deep dive series by the end of the offseason. In fact, we're over halfway through now at this point. I believe this is the 15th or 16th one that we've done, maybe even 17th actually. If you're curious about who we've covered and you want to watch those deep dives, there is a playlist with all of them. So go to my playlist tab, you'll find a playlist there, NBA Deep Dives 2024. And, you know, we upload content on this channel every day, similar quality to this. I work work super hard on it, and I want you guys to be a part of it because DeHave Nation is our community. We're trying to grow it into something special, and I just really need your guys' help to do that because I am so passionate about basketball. I'm so passionate about this community. I loved, making these videos. It's really how I express everything, and I just, it's the most beautiful, fun thing in the world to me. So if you guys could subscribe, it would really make my day. It would mean so much. And not even that, just I want you guys to be around the channel. I want this community to be a strong, positive, big community, and we're trying to grow with that. So, the biggest things you could do is leave a like on the video if you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment, Pistons fan or not. I want to hear from you guys. I love engaging with you guys. The support has been so big and strong, and I appreciate all of your positive feedback, even negative feedback. I appreciate it. It helps me. So as long as it's constructive, right? Other than that, follow my Twitch and my Twitter. The links are down in the description. We're actually going to start streaming on Twitch pretty soon here because I want to find new, and more engaging ways to talk to you guys, not just the comment section. I love talking to you guys in the comments, and I try to, respond to almost every comment that I can. I can't respond to them all. It's just too much, but I try to respond to as much as I can. But I want to talk to you guys like in real time. I want to engage with you guys in different ways and just a little bit more. So I think streaming is a little bit more of an intimate engaging. So in regards to really talking to you guys, not just texting basically in the comments, it's more like, I'll be playing 2K or whatever, just, giving my takes, and then you guys can, talk to me in real time through the chat. So I think that's going to be fun. Follow my Twitter. I'm pretty active over there. And again, I just want to engage with you guys more. So those are two things you could do. Follow Twitch and Twitter. But the biggest things you could do, as I said, if you enjoyed the video and you support the channel, leave a like, subscribe, comment. You don't have to, and I'm not trying to guilt you into it or anything, but it does help me out, and I want to build a strong community. I want you guys to be part of it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the Pistons video. Pistons fans, you guys have a great future, and I'm excited for your future. And I just, I love your fan base. You guys are so passionate, just like me and my Sixers fans, and you don't tolerate, you don't have low standards. And I really respect and admire that as fans because I can relate to that a lot. And I actually think what you guys are going through now is very similar to what my fan base went through and me in the process. So I can relate to you guys a ton, and I respect the way you've all handled it. You won't tolerate anything less than the best effort from the front office, from the players, from your entire organization. I love that about you guys. It will get better, man. We figured it out, and we have like the worst track record like ever of figuring things out. And we haven't won a championship in, 40 years, but we're working on it. And I think, if you asked me 10 years ago where we'd be right now, I'd laugh at you. I'd say, wow, top 5, top 10 player in the league. You just signed Paul George. You have a superstar point guard. Come on, what is this? So, I think you guys will get there too, man. Patience is everything. Embrace the losing seasons. Embrace the no expectations, because it actually gets a little stressful and toxic when there is a ton of expectations. So just embrace it. Have fun with it. Enjoy the weirdness and craziness of what's going on with your organization. You just have to laugh at it. Otherwise, you'll cry. And that's kind of what I did with my Sixers. So I learned how to laugh at it over time. But hopefully, you guys have a great rest of your day today. Pistons fans, hit me up in the comments, and I will catch you guys in the next one. This is your boy DeHave, and as always, peace.